Building end panels sounds simple, but they taught me more than I expected, from tricky measurements to finished details that really matter. Here's what I learned the hard way, so you don't have to. When I'm talking end panels, in the kitchens that I do what they call an applied end panel. That is an end panel that is built separate from the cabinet and attached after the cabinet is made. Now, the kitchen that we're working on, that we've been working on the last few videos, is a kitchen with raised panel doors. So our end panel is going to be a raised panel end panel, and we're going to build it here on our router table. We're going to do the ends of our rail stock first. We have our bit that cuts our rail stock already installed in our router, and we have to line up our fence with a bearing that is in the center of our router bit. So the best way to do that is to take a straight edge, put against the bearing, and bring our fence forward until the bearing and the fence line up together, and then we're right where we want to be, and then we'll clamp our fence down with our F-clamps. Clamp my table down solid to my workbench, and in the back here I've built a little shroud that will just set to the back of the table and help exhaust some of my chips to the trash can. I need to build a hood someday that will hook up to my dust collector to do a better job. That sounds like a future video. Before we can begin, we have to set our router bit at the correct height. I'll do that with a practice piece. I'll check it a little bit and then make sure that I have it set exactly where I want to. You run your material through your router bit upside down, so this is the face of the door, this is the back of the door, and I want to set my router bit down a little bit. I want this to be a little bit bigger right here. This edge I want to be a little bit bigger. This is our bead cut. This is where our panel will go, and then this is the back of our door. I have my cutter set to the height that I want. I'm now going to do a sample piece. I always do a sample piece to make sure everything's set up just right before I do my pieces. Our sample came out just the way we wanted to. So now it's time to route all the ends. Okay, here's all our rails. I now have all of the end of the rails done. By using wider pieces to go through as I do my routing, I'm able to hang on to it better and be safer in my cuts. I've changed out my stile bit and I've made the cut on my sample piece, and you can see how the corners line up the way they're supposed to. My tongue lines up with my groove just like it's supposed to. My beads line up, and so I have it set exactly the way it should be. And I did it the same way I set up originally. I made sure my fence lined up with my bearing, and I made sure the height of my cutter lined up with the cut that I had already made on my rail. We have our stile and rail stock done now. Now it's time to cut it to size. Remember, we did it extra wide so that I could have good control and hang on to it really well as it went through the router. Now we're going to cut it to size. We're going to cut each of these in half because this is two pieces, a left and a right. Let's move this out of the way here, and let's go ahead and cut. Now that I have my stiles and rails all done, let's check. Oh, look how that goes together. That dry fit's going to be really good. That's just exactly what we want. Now we're getting ready to do the panels. I have changed out my router table to my panel cutter table, and let's get ready to cutter. We have to line our fence up again with our bearing on our cutter. Use that straight edge, and there we are right there. And we'll finish clamping our fence. This is our nice fence, smooth edge that we can run our stock through. And we're right there where we need to be on that bearing. This is the panel, one of the panels for our doors. On the back side, I have made a cut here that corresponds with the lip on the back of my stiles and rails. We're going to be running our panel through face down, and I'm going to be making successive cuts. I'm not going to try to take off all my material with one cut. I'm going to do it a little at a time and adjust so that I come out just exactly where I need to make a tongue here that is the same size as the groove on my stile and rail. I'm putting on my grippy gloves so that I can hang on to my panel real good as it goes through. Let's make our first cut. There's our first cut. It makes a nice smooth scoop cut. And you see that the tongue that we're going to end up here, we have to end up with a tongue that is only 1/4 of an inch. I'm almost 1/2 of an inch right here, right now. So we'll go ahead, we'll run all our panels at this depth, reset the depth, run them all again, working our way down to that 1/4 inch tongue that we're working for. I have made 2 preliminary cuts. This is how far I've gone so far, and my tongue is still too big. I used my sample piece that I made the stiles and rails with to get my panel cut just exactly where I wanted it. Let's go ahead and give it a try. And it fits right in there, and it makes a nice tight seam right through there and fits in our groove just like it's supposed to, like that. Okay, let me go ahead and get the final cut made on all of our panels, and then I'll show you the next step. Now that I have all of the pieces made, we got to do one more thing first. We got to dry fit this and make sure that it all goes together correctly. This is the top rail. Now the top rail is extra big on our upper end panels, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute, but not yet. So then our panel is going to fit kind of tight because I made that tongue very tight so that it would fit very tight. Here's our bottom rail. It's like that. And then our top stile like that. Okay. Now, when I sand the scoop on here all the way around, that's going to decrease the dimension just a little bit. It will fit better into the grooves. So just because it's a little tight right now, that's the way I want it. I want it a little tight. But when we sand, we'll go together. Okay, let me get the scoop sanded. And the way I do that, I either take just a piece of hand sandpaper and sand that. But the reason I sand it now is because it's going to be too hard to sand once the door is assembled. Sand your end grain really good. Or you could take your palm sander and get the majority of it and then come back and clean it up like that. But the scoop has got to be sanded. Now because the back side goes against the cabinet, because this is a plied end panel, I don't have to worry about sanding the back side. The face of the raised part of the panel will sand when we sand the whole door. Let me go ahead and get the scoop sanded, and then I'll show you how we put it together. There, now we have our scoop all sanded, ready to go. Let me show you how we're going to put this together. We'll set this back here. I take my stiles and I put them side by side. And I take my pencil and I mark just about 1/4 of an inch up from the length of the tongue. This is going to be the top of the door. And I told you I would tell you why I made this big. The reason I make this big is because this is going to be covered by a crown mold this much. And so only just a small portion of this is going to show. There's going to be a crown mold on the top, and I want my reveal at the top to be the same as my reveal at the bottom, and so I make my stile extra big, allowing room for the crown. Same down here. I mark that so that I know where to put my glue. That's what that mark is for. So I know I put my glue here and my glue here, because you don't glue in your panel. Your panel has to float. Now, we have a solid wood panel. Solid wood expands and contracts with moisture and humidity and temperature. And so these little balls here, these are called space balls. Space balls create a space between your panel and the inside of the groove of your stile and rail. Your panel is made 1 inch or 1/4 of an inch smaller than the space that is allowed by the grooves in your door. And these little space balls go in here, and they're rubber. They're a hard rubber ball. You put them in here, and as your panel expands and contracts with your temperature and your humidity, these little space balls keep your panel centered so that it always looks perfectly centered in your door. Makes your door look better. So, space balls, remember space balls. All right. Let's just go ahead and assemble this door. And like I say, I put them side by side here so that I know where to put my glue. And I put plenty of glue. This will be sanded, so I don't have to worry about having a little squeeze out. In fact, I want a little squeeze out to make sure I've got enough. Same down here. My mark helps me make sure that I don't get so much glue on my door that I have glue in where the panel is. That's not what we want. Okay. Space balls in place, glue in place. There's our top rail, flush with the top of the door. Here comes our panel. Like I say, I made my panel nice and tight. Okay, just like that. Bottom rail. Okay, looking good so far. Other stile. Okay, we'll put some clamps on that and we'll have that door glued together. But be sure to wait around. We're going to get this glued together and then sand it out. But I have one more finishing touch to show you. Stick around so that you can learn how to do that finishing touch that really sets your end panel off. Okay, time to take our end panel out of clamps. I've got a little squeeze out here I'm going to scrape off and make it easier to sand. Okay. I'm going to sand it 80 grit, 120 grit, and 150 grit to a final sand and have it all sanded up and smooth and ready to go. And then I want you to be sure to come back and watch this final detail that I'm going to put on that really makes the difference. And I'm going to show you how it all goes together. But there's our door, our end panel all glued up. It looks very nice. Let's get it sanded out. I have it all sanded to 120, and I just wanted to show you a sample of the crown mold that goes on and why I made the top rail extra tall. So that's the top of the cabinet right there. That's how that'll look. Our cabinet is 12 inches deep, but my end panel is 12.5 inches deep. It sticks out just a ½ inch more than the cabinet, and so I want to have kind of a detail, a soft detail, on the face of my panel. I'm going to do that by putting a 1/8 round over on the face of my panel. Now, I don't want my round over to go up underneath my crown, so I'm going to start my round over down 4 inches. So that'll be where I stop, and then we'll leave this corner nice and square, inside and out. Before I do the final 150 sand, I'll sand the routs that I just put on, and then don't forget to break this inside corner edge right here that's on the stile and rail. That's a sharp edge, and we don't want that sharp. We want it crisp. We just want to take off that sharp. And then we'll finish sanding. And to answer your questions, that's how we make applied end panels. And we'll see you next time on Woodworking with Wes.